At the beginning of the movie, the story takes us to Miami, where we're introduced to a female police officer named Jackie Velez, who's driving alone. Jackie works as a narcotics officer, so her job is to crack down on drug trafficking. Not long after, Jackie pulls into a parking lot and immediately calls someone. During the conversation, she says she feels like she's being followed. The person on the other end tells Jackie to stay calm and suggests that she head home right away. But just as Jackie gets out of her car, the situation suddenly changes. With no way out, Jackie manages to send a message to someone. After that, she throws her phone into the river to cover her tracks. Unfortunately, the attackers eventually corner Jackie and kill her. The next day, we're introduced to Den, the head of the narcotics division and Jackie's supervisor. At the time, Den is talking with the FBI director about Jackie's death. The FBI director suspects that the mastermind behind Jackie's murder may still be someone from the same police team. Because of that, the FBI director decides to send 2 agents to interrogate Jackie's co-workers. Not long after, the 2 FBI agents arrive, one of them named Dell. Dell immediately begins questioning the members of the narcotics division under Den's command. One of the people he interrogates is Den's deputy, a police chief known as Sergeant. Dell keeps firing question after question until Sergeant feels like he's being accused. His emotions boil over, and Sergeant ends up getting into a fight with Dell.
The guy that just took your promotion, they fucking promoted. Because Dane works for a violent criminal apprehension team, and the reason they...
Which further hamstrings Jackie's investigation.
Double shoulder rig you wearing there in Wild West.
Fortunately, several other officers quickly step in and break up the fight. Later, while Sergeant's alone in the restroom, Den comes to see him. Den tells Sergeant to be patient because he's not the only one being questioned by the FBI. The entire team is. The FBI suspects that the person behind Jackie's murder is one of their own co-workers.
It's fucking basic.
A few hours later, Sergeant is seen sitting outside with 3 of his co-workers. Meanwhile, Den is still in his office. There, Den finally opens a message Jackie sent before she died. In the message, Jackie gives him the address of a house that contains a huge amount of money. Back with Sergeant and his 3 co-workers, they're approached by the head of the DA named Maddie. Maddie comes to help solve Jackie's murder case. However, Sergeant doesn't pay much attention to him because he's still upset about being suspected by the FBI earlier.
A forensic murder case. We're not gonna let a cop's body get cold.
Not long after, Den arrives and tells them they're going to investigate a house believed to be connected to Jackie's death. Because of that, they need to leave immediately. Sergeant questions why they're still being assigned the case when the FBI no longer trusts them. Den explains that this is actually their chance to prove that the narcotics division wasn't involved in Jackie's death. Before they leave, one of the team members named Mike asks what's actually inside the house. Den explains that there's a large amount of money inside, which is believed to be connected to Jackie's death. Once everything is ready, they head to the house. When they arrive, they learn that the house is occupied by a woman named Desi. Den asks for permission to conduct a search while showing an official warrant from headquarters. Because of that, Desi allows them to come inside. Den, Sergeant, and the other team members immediately begin searching the entire house.
Static, Desi. What's up there?
Electrical wire. Shouldn't be sticking out.
While upstairs, Den and Sergeant discover several hidden red barrels. Before opening them, they first ask Desi what's inside the barrels. Desi swears she has no idea what's in them. She explains that she only moved into the house about a week ago as a renter.
Wrong.
Did it is a crime does not exonerate you from its commission.
I mean, we all love to lecture and moralize, don't we?
After that, Den and the other team members head back upstairs. Den then orders the barrels to be opened immediately. Once they're open, each barrel turns out to be filled with a huge amount of cash, exactly as Jackie mentioned in her message. Each barrel is estimated to contain about $1.4 million, and there are a total of 14 barrels in the house. Altogether, they find around $20 million. Following procedure, all of the money has to be counted on site. After that, Den orders everyone on the team to hand over their phones because he's worried there's a traitor among them. After that, Den assigns the 2 female officers on his team to count all the money they found. Meanwhile, Mike is ordered to stand guard outside the house. In the middle of all this, Den and Sergeant start arguing again. Sergeant suggests that they leave the place immediately because that much money definitely doesn't belong to just anyone. He thinks it would be safer to take all the money back to the office first and count it there, but Den refuses the suggestion. He insists that, according to procedure, the money has to be counted on site. Den is worried that if they don't count it right away, someone on the team might take some of the money before it's turned over to headquarters.
No, I can't. The rules are you count the money. Fucking following protocol. We can't pick it. I know. I'm fucking aware, man.
Not long after, Mike reports that a police car has stopped in front of the house. Den and Sergeant immediately go outside to meet the officer. It turns out to be a local patrol officer. The officer asks what Den and his team are doing there. Den explains that they're carrying out an official assignment from headquarters and is even willing to show their warrant if necessary. After hearing the explanation, the officer believes them, continues the patrol, and leaves the area. After that, Den and Sergeant go back inside the house. Den tells the 2 female officers counting the money to hurry up. He's worried that if anyone else finds out about the money, the situation could get out of control.
Unlabeled. We just count.
Just count it.
We gotta count.
Yeah.
All right. All right. So we'll make 2 piles.
Meanwhile, Mike, who's still standing guard outside, secretly takes out a backup phone and sends a message to someone. In the message, Mike says they've just hit the jackpot after finding all the money. After that, Den questions Desi, the homeowner, again. Den asks whether Desi knows Jackie and whether she knows where the money in the house came from. But Desi once again says she doesn't know anything because she just moved in. Not long after, the house phone rings and Sergeant answers it. The person on the other end tells Sergeant and the others to leave the house immediately. If they stay, they'll all be wiped out. After the call ends, Sergeant immediately tells Den that they're in danger. The caller just threatened to attack if they don't leave right away. Even so, Den isn't intimidated. He still wants to finish counting the money first, even after the threat has been made. Sergeant then asks who the money really belongs to and what it has to do with Jackie's death. Den simply replies that they'll find out soon enough.
I don't know what you're doing, man.
I will run it the way I see fit.
I am so far from seeing the fucking humor in... Call the major, or I will.
A little later, Sergeant calls Maddie, the head of the DA. Sergeant asks Maddie to come to the house because they found an enormous amount of money. Sergeant is worried that an attack might happen, so they need additional backup. Maddie agrees and says he'll arrive in about 30 minutes. Inside the house, Desi accidentally overhears Den talking to the 2 female officers who are still counting the money. From the conversation, Den is heard telling the 2 officers to leave with all the money. However, the 2 female officers remain silent and don't give any response. Meanwhile, Sergeant walks over to Mike, who's still standing guard outside. Mike says the area around the house feels strange. The houses nearby all look empty, like no one lives in them. At the same time, the lights in one of the houses suddenly start flickering. Sergeant walks over to that house and boldly goes inside because he's sure someone is in there. Once inside, Sergeant carefully checks every room with his weapon ready. Meanwhile, Desi overhears Den talking to his superior on the phone again. During the conversation, Den reports that they only found $150,000 in seized cash, even though the actual amount is nearly $20 million. Hearing that, Desi starts to suspect that Den is planning to steal the seized money. Not long after, Mike comes back into the house. Desi immediately tells him that Den and the others are planning to steal the seized money. After hearing what Desi says, Mike immediately walks back outside and appears to contact someone. At the same time, the house phone rings again. This time, one of Den's female officers answers it. The caller makes another threat. The caller says that if they haven't left the house within 10 minutes, they'll all be slaughtered. Not long after the call ends, the female officer immediately tells Den and Mike, who has just come back inside, about the threat. Den quickly prepares for the worst. After that, Den asks where Sergeant is. Mike replies that Sergeant is still in the house next door and hasn't come back yet. Den then tells everyone to start moving the money. But before they can do that, a group of attackers arrives first, and a shootout breaks out.
I'm breaking left!
Den and Mike manage to drive the attackers back. However, when Den tries to chase them down and capture them, the attackers have already disappeared. A little later, Sergeant returns with a man he captured from the house next door. The man swears that he's not part of the group that just attacked them. He says he's just an ordinary mafia member who happens to be renting the house next door. To verify his story, Den tells a man to video call his boss. Once the call connects, Den asks whether the money they found belongs to the mafia boss. The boss replies that the money isn't his, but he knows who the real owner is. The mafia boss explains that all the money belongs to a cartel boss from Mexico, and that Jackie had previously stolen it. The mafia boss also says that Jackie was being hunted by the cartel boss, so they need to be careful. After hearing the explanation, Den feels that something doesn't make sense. Den questions why the cartel boss would still be hunting Jackie if she's already dead. That makes Den realize the FBI's suspicion is probably correct, that Jackie wasn't killed by her enemies, but by her own co-workers. When Den goes back into the house, the two female officers on his team have already finished counting all the money. Because of that, Den plans to take all the money back to the office. Den immediately orders everyone on his team to pack up all the counted money. At the same time, Mike asks for permission to use the restroom. But as soon as he gets there, Mike panics because his backup phone is missing after the earlier shootout. Mike then asks Desi, the homeowner, whether she's seen or found a phone that might have fallen on the floor. Desi says no, because she hasn't been allowed to go anywhere. Mike finally comes up with an idea. He deliberately knocks over a candle to set the house on fire. That way, Mike hopes Den and Sergeant won't find his backup phone. Who Mike really is will be revealed later. Meanwhile, Den and the rest of the team notice the house is starting to burn, so they quickly leave while taking all the seized money with them. Once outside, they see that Mike is already there, keeping Desi safe. Mike claims that he brought Desi outside as soon as he saw the house catching fire. But we already know that Mike was the one who started the fire. Not long after, Maddie, the head of the DA, arrives to pick them up. Den then orders his two female officers to take Desi to the police station in their own car. Meanwhile, Den, Mike, and Sergeant Lee with Maddie, while bringing all the money with them. On the way, Mike suddenly suggests that they split the money evenly instead of turning it over to headquarters. As soon as he hears the suggestion, Den rejects it because corruption goes against his principles. Mike then boldly calls Den a hypocrite. According to Mike, Den had also planned to run off with all the money. Desi is even a witness because she overheard Den talking on the phone and speaking with his two female officers. After hearing the accusation, Den says that he now knows who the real traitor is. It turns out the phone conversation Den had near Desi from the very beginning was actually a trap. Den did it on purpose, so Desi would pass the information on to Mike, who was standing guard outside. That's what led to the group of attackers showing up, and Den is convinced they were sent by Mike. Mike immediately denies the accusation. He says Den had already taken his phone, so there was no way he could have contacted anyone. But then Sergeant shows everyone a phone that turns out to be Mike's backup phone, which he dropped during the earlier shootout. Seeing that, Mike has nothing to say. Den then tells Mike to call the last number in the phone's call log. Suddenly, Maddie suddenly takes down Sergeant and Den, then points his gun at them. That's when it's revealed that Maddie and Mike have been working together from the very beginning to steal all the money. Den then asks if Maddie was also the one who killed Jackie at the beginning of the movie. Maddie admits that's true, saying that he and Mike were the masterminds behind Jackie's death. They had learned that Jackie had stolen all the money from the cartel boss. They planned to take the money from Jackie. But Jackie hid the money first, so Maddie and Mike decided to kill her, so she wouldn't become a problem for them. Without Maddie realizing it, Sergeant's phone has actually been connected to a call with Dell from the FBI the whole time. At that moment, Dell and the FBI team are already waiting ahead, and immediately stop their vehicle. With no other choice, Maddie and Mike run away while carrying the bag filled with money. Den and Sergeant immediately chase after them. After a long chase, Den finally manages to corner Mike. Meanwhile, Sergeant also manages to corner Maddie. With nowhere left to run, Maddie promises to hand over all the money in the bag as long as Sergeant doesn't kill him. Sergeant then deliberately opens a bag. But instead of money, it's filled with stacks of books. It's explained that the real money had already been taken to the police station by Den's 2 female officers after they learned that Mike and Maddie were the traitors. After that, Sergeant kills Maddie to avenge Jackie's death. Meanwhile, Den chooses not to kill Mike. Den wants to send Mike to prison and make sure he rots there. A little later, Den and Sergeant arrive at the police station. They immediately reunite with the 2 female officers who had already handed over all the money to the senior police officials. There, the senior officers praise Den and his entire team. Besides capturing the traitors, they're also commended for remaining honest. As a reward, the senior police officials promise to promote all of them. After that, the movie comes to an end.